Hey, Frog fans, welcome back to another episode of Frogs Insider presented by the Flying T Club. Jamie Plunkett here with a very special guest, Senior Deputy Athletics Director for External Affairs and Revenue Generation, Ryan Peck, my man. Thank you so much. Been trying to get you on the show. I'm glad it worked out. Congrats on your first year at TCU, man. How's everything going?
Jamie, well, one, thank you so much, and I appreciate your audience and the platform and all that you do for the Frog fans everywhere. And so excited to be with you today. But for me, in 1 year, it has been unbelievable, and I've enjoyed every single second of it. And there's two aspects that I wake up thinking about. It's one, first and foremost, always our student athletes, and two, our fans and alumni, and what we continue to do for them on a daily basis across all of our sports. But it's this place is special, and so I'm fortunate to be here, fortunate to be in purple, and loving my time in Fort Worth so far with my family.
And we're going to talk a lot about what you do for the university and how you're involved in NIL and all the scholarship decisions that are happening here in the near future. But first, I want to start a little bit of bio work with you because I know that the TCU women's soccer team just won a Big 12 championship. You talked about all the things that you do for the student athletes, but people might not know that you yourself, soccer student athlete, 4-year athlete over there at Lander, man, how cool was it to be a student athlete, have that experience, and now be able to use that experience for today's student athletes and see a championship in the sport that you love at the university you work for, man?
Yeah, it's very special, and I was that prototypical kid that just loved sports, and I think it was my parents' way of just getting all my energy out as a youth, and so played football, basketball, baseball growing up. Actually wrestled 4 years in high school too, but
All right.
wrestling or soccer for me was the one that kind of just excelled at a little bit. And so I made my college decision based on sports, and I wanted to go be at a good program. So Lander, not many people have heard of it. We were top 25. And I wanted to go to a spot that was, somewhat close to home for me in the Southeast where my parents were at in Atlanta. And so was fortunate to have that opportunity. And so I look at what I do now and what I've done throughout my career, and I give credit to an individual named Gene T. McFerrin. And that's a donor who gave me a scholarship. And so it provided me an opportunity at this life of working in college sports that I am super grateful for. And I really haven't looked back. And so it's funny now because I'll keep a soccer ball in my office and maybe on Zoom calls every now and then, or I'll talk to a soccer student athlete that we're trying to recruit and tell how great this program is. And I always start by saying, I guarantee you are a much better soccer player than I ever was if they're being recruited to TCU than me being to Lander. But it's in the administrative role. I don't, I love talking to coaches about game plan and strategy. And I do it with all of our coaches. It's not being critical. It's just me learning as a sports fan. But it's fun with the soccer coaches where I can relate it a little bit more, knowing at one point many years ago I was one of those guys on the field trying to implement that strategy as opposed to just dictating as the coaches do.
Man, you mentioned being in the room talking with coaches about game plan and strategy. I think the average fan has just a sliver of what actually goes into game planning, strategy, and scheme at this level, because you sit in a room with coaches, and as someone who's been around baseball and basketball and football my entire life, sitting down with those guys and having conversations, and it's like, I don't know what you're talking about. You're using a whole different language now.
Yeah.
It's very funny to see fans come out and say, man, they should have done this at this point or this at this point, because the hindsight is always 2020. But the amount of work and the amount of knowledge that that the coaches at this level have, and at TCU specifically have,
Yeah.
is wildly impressive.
Well, and it's even fun too to sit with a coach even watching a game that may not be one of our games, and watching maybe an NFL game when we're on the road or something like that. And just the way that they watch it is different. And, they can tell you what's about to happen, even though they've done no game planning. And so you just think about that their job is analyzing film and watching recruits and developing a game plan and the strategy and the counter strategy to provide that advantage to help us win. We all think it's pretty easy, but it's a skill and a craft to be able to identify those and develop a consistent winning strategy week after week. And so we're fortunate here that we have an elite group of coaches that do a great job. And so anytime I get to just pick their brain, I love to do it because their level of expertise is so high.
You talked about honing your craft and having an expertise. You've done that as well for yourself. You spent time at Chattanooga as the director of marketing and promotions, moved on to Denver as the AVC for external affairs, and then most recently before TCU, the associate vice president and chief revenue officer at University of North Texas. How have those experiences um, built up your understanding of what it
Yeah.
means to run an athletics department and be successful at the Division I level?
Yeah. So, it's funny for me because everyone in this industry, their path is different. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm the individual that pours myself into the job, and I am head down trying to make it the biggest and best that it can possibly be. And so each one of those stops, I have these record-setting moments or these opportunities that I'm proud to be a very, very small part of. And then I get to a spot like TCU that has, been to College World Series and has won multiple championships and been in the CFP. And it's like, all right, what does that next look like? And so, I think a lot of it for me, and it goes back to my experiences. I've touched every area of the revenue generation side of it, but doing it in a way as we need to grow those revenue streams, as we need to extend our brand, as we need to improve our social engagement. What does that mean for TCU? What does that look like? And how can we do it in the right way? And um, so I pull from each of my stops and experiences, and there are things that have worked well, but they won't necessarily work here because it worked at XYZ. But for me, it's funny. I've always been in bigger media markets where it's no offense to a Starkville, Mississippi, or a Statesboro, Georgia, but this is just kind of my mindset and savvy when it comes to media buying or social reach. I look at it a little bit differently. Just that's where my path has taken me. So I think about it. All those steps throughout my career have allowed me this opportunity, and I definitely don't take it for granted. But a lot of people think, and even my mom's like, "Oh yeah, you just go and watch sports." But my 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. It's the business, it's the savviness, it's the branding, it's things that we working on with headlines or articles or impressions. I mean, the wording and all that stuff. That's kind of where I spend my day to day, where I treat it as a business, but it happens to be in a basketball arena next to an amazing football stadium on a college campus. And so, think about it: how do we run and operate it in the best interests of our student athletes and our fans? And I'm grateful for that opportunity all the time.
My wife calls it sports work as
Sports work,
opposed to
yeah,
work.
yeah,
So I hear what you're saying there, man. So you've been at TCU for just about a year now. What's something you know about TCU now that you didn't know before you took the job?
yeah. It's I am still drinking the purple Kool-Aid,
There you go.
and
All right.
in this era of college athletics, in this era of change and uncertainty, we have a university that wants to compete at the highest level and continue to do that because they've seen the success, they tasted the success, and so I put that pressure on me daily to figure out the strategy so that if I'm being honest, that the TV contract for the SEC and the Big Ten are substantially more, and that's a disadvantage for us. And so, what are those strategies that we need to put in place to overcome, one revenue shortfall there, or the uniqueness of our alumni size being one of the smaller Power Four universities that we don't have 500,000 alumni, and so people would say, "Oh, you just build a 100,000 seat stadium and fill it up, and there's a huge revenue boost." Well, no. I said I don't want to touch Amon G. Carter because it's the perfect size for us, and Schollmeyer Arena. Are there things that I would do differently and tweak and adjust? Absolutely. I think there's always ways that we can improve the fan experience, and I think the fan experience evolves. And so I walk around these facilities, I walk around our student athletes, I walk around our campus, and I continue to be impressed, and it just pushes me to work harder day in, day out.
Speaking of facilities, are you going to be one of the first people in that snow room when it opens
it's
up?
it's funny. Jeremiah and I were doing the walkthrough the other day, a little hard hat tour, and he hopped in it, and he's standing right there, and he's like, "This is gonna be my little snowman, right here to the side." But it'll be a neat asset. And when I talk to recruits, I'm like, I need you to picture a student athlete spa because it'll make you feel good. It'll help your muscles. It'll help provide mental clarity. Like it'll have these features that'll be pretty awesome. So it's coming along, and I can't wait for that one to be finished.
Facilities used to be the thing that was the attraction, right? Like that was the thing that the university would invest in as a differentiator between it and its competitors to say, hey, you would rather come play for TCU because we have the best locker rooms, the best recovery facilities, the best stadium with the best fans. But it seems like college athletics is starting to shift away from facilities to rev sharing, NIL,
Mhm.
and how we can compensate student athletes appropriately. I know that while the financial investment in facilities is still really good and important, and TCU is going to continue to do that, tell me a little bit about the conversations that are being had on the rev sharing and the NIL side from a TCU perspective, because we know some of the stuff that Jeremiah has said publicly about participating to the maximum level. But what goes into participating at the maximum level like TCU wants to do?
Yeah, well, great question because as I mentioned to you, we're meeting daily and
Yeah.
thinking about it constantly as to what this next iteration of college athletics look like. I joke, there's a coach, it wasn't one of ours, it was in the industry that said, my kids would get dressed in a trash can if you're giving them, a six-figure NIL payment right now. They don't care. But to your point, it's evolved. And so where I'm coming at it from and where we think about it is, if we're competing for a kid based on dollars alone, that's probably not the right kid that we want to be coming to TCU. And so all these things are important in the environment, in the city, the location, the academics, the education. That's the old amateur student athlete in me. That those are very, very important factors, especially of the TCU experience. And so, but on the flip side, to compete at the highest level, we need to be able to build out our plan and strategy for what that looks like. And so I've kind of put it into two buckets as the revenue sharing comes in house. That's, the old term would be the pay for play. That's kind of your amount above and beyond your scholarship that you're going to be able to earn and pocket that and monetize your skill set in a way because you're going to be representing TCU. But secondly, how do we get to true commercialized NIL and brand ambassadors and people that can showcase their brand out in public and align with the company in a way that can make them a marketer that helps drive dollars back to that business. And so the good news is we have some ideas and concepts that we're running out these theories as to what makes the most sense and how we do it. The bad news is nobody knows right now. We're still waiting on a lawsuit, and
Yeah.
we're building the plan while we fly a little bit. And so, and we're running up to a deadline. Come April 7th, we have a preliminary agreement on the House versus NCAA settlement. But come April 7th, that's expected to be finalized. And so, collectives, as we know it, are shifting how they're going to be operating, and revenue sharing will as of today. We joke as of today at this time because it could change in a week or two, but come April 7th and July 1 that we'll be in a revenue sharing model for the Power Four conferences and beyond. So it's a wild time and
Yeah.
because the aspect of how we operate is having to evolve. And so we're going through a great commercialization. There's lots of lawyers involved. There's a lot of money involved. I mean, that's a $2 billion settlement, that class action lawsuit that is going to drastically change what or how college athletics operates. And so I still get optimistic when college football Saturday and you got fans are loving the atmosphere and the tailgating, or a buzzer beater in basketball and packed arenas, because at the end of the day, I don't want what the passion and the pageantry that makes college athletics so great to ever go away. And so it's I want game winning home runs, walk off home runs, and all those things that we love that our students rally around, that our campus and community rally around. And so that's why we're working so hard daily, so that we can figure out and keep the core front and center for all the fans across the world.
So you mentioned that there's an opportunity for legitimate name, image, and likeness, not the pay for play. What does that look like in house? Do you have local companies, national companies that you're having conversations with now to say, hey, when we get all of this formalized, when the settlement is formalized, we'd love to connect our student athletes with X dealership, or Raising Cane's is a popular one in Fort Worth, right? Or are those partnerships going to work through the university as well, or will that still be third party?
Yeah, great questions. We're still figuring it out, but part of it, you think about it as a corporation here locally, and I put it into a couple of different buckets, but it needs to make sense for your corporate marketing plan and in a way that aligns with your values and your business. And what that looks like and how that looks like is still to be determined. But I think the key part of it moving forward is, the value is based on fair market value, and so
Mm.
there'll be some aspects to that and some different enforcement agencies that kind of track that and see what that fair market value is, because right now there hasn't been that type of checks and balances for these type of NIL deals. But that is a big point in the settlement in this lawsuit is it needs to be fair market value. So Raising Cane's, for example, and as I've thought about this and had some conversations, a local partnership with the marketing manager in Fort Worth or DFW has a value to it. A national partnership with the Raising Cane's has a completely different,
Mm-hmm.
higher value to it. And where do TCU student athletes fit into that? And so, um, I think a perfect example right now is you look at Haley Van Lith, who is a on her own, her brand, her name, her a Olympic medalist. She has a significant national reach and value. And there's a lot of athletes that you got your Shador Sanders, your Caitlin Clarks that you see constantly right now on national ads, but that's not for all 550 of our student athletes. And so
Mm-hmm.
what does it look like locally, or where do those align, or where does it make sense? And that's something that our student athletes, uh, we're one of the first as we talk about building their brand and working with Neely and the NIL suite. And how much do you want to spend doing that? And it can be treated as an internship, and you could have some social media marketing experience and brand ambassador building opportunities if you do it the right way while you're competing in your sport. And so as we kind of get to this next phase of an in-house, I'm looking at a lot of different ideas and concepts that ultimately make the most sense for one, our business and corporate environment, especially being in Fort Worth, and two, what makes sense for the student athletes as well.
There's another aspect to this as well that I think is equally important, and that's scholarships, because of the new scholarship limits that are being set by this settlement and the challenges that that's going to present for universities. Because it's my understanding that the 21, 22 million, whatever the bucket ends up being, is for both rev sharing and for additional scholarships. So you couldn't have someone come in and say, I'd love to give $1 million to baseball or beach volleyball to sponsor scholarships, because it has to come from that bucket. Is that a correct understanding of
Yeah,
where it's headed?
and there are a lot of nuances to it, but and I think the scholarship piece specifically, we're still held to Title IX federal guidelines, and so and we may even be on the revenue sharing piece too. There's so many aspects of this that
Mm.
are still kind of uncertain. And so as you think about it, I mean, some schools are, they've come out publicly and said, hey, we're gonna every opportunity that we're allowed on the roster limit, we're gonna fully fund that scholarship, to the maximum ability. And but that's, you're talking anywhere between 30 and $50 million annually that's added before the $20 million rev share. So it is it's a big number. And we have a responsibility to the institution to be good stewards of our resources and financially do what's right. And you could argue either side of it, but I think to say, hey, we're going to spend an additional $50 million annually on scholarships plus additional 20, that's a big number for any university and any athletic department. And so that's what we're kind of looking at it for us. And how do we, one, increase opportunities for our students and our student athletes, and make sure we still meet our federal Title IX compliance, but doing what's in the best interest of TCU and the best interest of the future of our university. So that's part of the challenge, where every university is different, and different mix of sports and different financial wherewithal top to bottom. And so that it's a little bit of a game as to how everyone's going to be doing it. And I think about, all right, how can we continue to compete at the highest level, win championships, and graduate student athletes, and what does that look like for each one of our programs?
Well, it's a worthwhile challenge, that's for sure.
It is.
Just a couple more questions for you, Ryan, as we kind of wrap here. You talk, part of your role, and you've already talked about it a little bit, is revenue generation. When you look at the current landscape, and like you said, the Big Ten and the SEC are the front runners when it comes to what they're getting from their media deals. What are the realistic options that are out there right now to help close that gap for a Big 12 or an ACC school?
Yeah. There's, I don't think anybody has that one magic bullet. And, it's because it was made public. I used the example of Tennessee. They said they're going to add a 10% talent fee, onto every season ticket. That's going to help directly fund their revenue sharing, their NIL, or whatever they want to do. Could we do that? Sure. But is that the path that I want to go down? Not right now, not today. It doesn't make sense for our fan base. And so the way I look at it is how can we get a little more sophisticated in how we operate? And it's going to be some stair step approach where, because I don't have a $20 million level we can push, but I also want to do it the right way, in the TCU way. And so, they've talked about jersey sponsorship, field sponsorship, but for us, I want it, if we go down that route, I want it to be the right brand that aligns with this university and aligns with Fort Worth. And so, so you think about, the sponsorship, the MMR side, and where that industry is going and what that looks like. I think about it from, a season ticket approach of how can we continue to get more purple in our stands on a regular basis. And so how can I get a little more creative with packages? And so when I meet with our leadership team and we talk about, tickets and just as this one one revenue source, it's not how can I generate the most revenue possible. It's how can I create the most competitive advantage inside all of our home venues for our 6 ticketed sports. And that's my number one priority. That's the North Star. And so are there ways to do it? And sometimes they'll have to sacrifice, like a football game this past weekend where I don't want any red in the building at all and not make some tickets available. I will absolutely do that because I want to give our student athletes and coaches a home field, home court advantage. And I want us to win games at home. And so that's where I'm leading the charge as we think about what's new and what the future looks like. And but there's a lot of things that we can do top to bottom that I feel can help us financially.
Well, if you're ever interested in the Frogs Insider basketball court, I got like $100 to put towards that.
We could find a little something.
Hey, let's do it. All right, yeah, one seat or something, half an armrest or something. But all right, last thing, just we've got a pretty rabid TCU audience over here at Frogs Insider, and I think they'd love to hear from you. This last item, where or how is TCU best prepared to capitalize on what just all of the things, all of the complexities? Just kind of call it what's next in college athletics. How is TCU best positioned to capitalize on all of that?
Yeah, well, with your rabid fan base and your the folks that listen, and I think you all are well aware of what TCU has done, and also thinking about where we can continue to go. And so I give our university leadership as here pretty soon we're going to be rolling out to kind of the new university strategic plan, and we look at athletics as a core pillar to that. And so in an era of change, in an era where ADs are trying to figure out how do we get through, this place is leaning in, and that's because of the people that have come long before me, long before us, and how this place was built, but trying to think about what the future looks like. And so that gets me excited because it's an opportunity where we can really kind of lean into the nuances of this business and say, all right, what makes sense and where do we fit in? So I go back to some of those things that we talked about of a passionate fan base, our location, the league right now, top to bottom, and what can we do? How can we continue to win championships and get us, more and more visibility and grow our brand? I joke now, I don't just want to grow it in the state or in the country. How do we grow it in the world? And I think you hear Commissioner Yormark talk about, some of these international games. And I think about the president going over to the Olympics this year, and people aren't saying what's TCU, they're saying go Frogs, and showing it. And that's that's kind of where my mindset is I want to continue to, harness all the greatness of this place and do it on the most visible stage possible for years to come. So, whether it's podcasts and conversations that anyone across the world can listen to our games on linear television, or where does the future of streaming go, so that a parent in Germany can watch their son or daughter compete in an Olympic sport. All those aspects that I want to improve for the betterment of our sport that will ultimately help our university and help the degree on your wall be worth more for those non-student athletes and fans. So it's so that's what we think about in this era of change and NIL. It's all right. What can we lean in hard for TCU that can help us continue at the highest level?
Folks, that's Ryan Peck, Senior Deputy Athletics Director for External Affairs and Revenue Generation. Ryan, thanks so much for taking the time today, man.
Hey, appreciate you. Always enjoy our conversation. So thanks so much. Go Frogs.
Go Frogs.